Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Blissful Literati. Today, we are going to discuss the 10th standard CBSE poem Animals, penned by Walt Whitman from his collection Song of Myself. But before we delve deep into his rich poetic world, let's first learn a little bit more about the poet himself. So, Walt Whitman was born on 31st May 1819 in West Hills, New York, and he died at the ripe old age of 72 on 26th March 1892 in Camden, New Jersey. His notable works include Drum Taps, O Captain, My Captain, Democratic Vistas, Leaves of Grass, Song of Myself, When Lilacs Last in the Dooryard Bloomed, etc. He was associated with the American Renaissance movement. This great literary icon found his place in the Hall of Fame for Great Americans in 1930. Now let us move on to the themes of this poem. That poem presents a contrast between simple animal instincts and refined yet complex human psyche. It also shows nature and nature's law versus man-made rules and regulations. Finally, it preaches peace in close habitation with natural world. Basically, Whitman seems to present a contrast between the animal world and the human world. The animals do their work without complaining about it. They are not refined, coarse rather. They go through the life caring for each other, fending for each other, living life peacefully in the midst of nature, in community or in herd. And at the end of the day, they're satisfied and happy with their life. Human beings, charged with apparent supremacy, have, on the other hand, carved out a more complex path for themselves. We are able to reach out and connect to God, but in our attempt to connect to the invisible force that is God, we have lost touch with the simplistic earthly life. At the same time, this search has separated us from one another and are guided by those who claim to have already connected with that force. The animals are guided by their instinct and fellow feeling, and the poet finds them more potent than the power of this human God. The animals are not driven by a desire for world supremacy. They simply want to feed their children. Hence, they have unlocked the peace which eludes human beings. Let us now read the poem first. Animals by Walt Whitman. I think I could turn and live with animals. They are so placid and self-contained. I stand and look at them long and long. They do not sweat and whine about their condition. They do not lie awake in the dark and weep for their sins. They do not make me sick discussing their duty to God. Not one is dissatisfied, not one is demented with the mania of owning things. Not one kneels to another, not to his kind that lived thousands of years ago. Not one is respectable or unhappy over the whole earth. So they show me their relations to me, and I accept them. They bring me tokens of myself. They evince them plainly in their possession. I wonder where they get those tokens. Did I pass that way huge times ago and negligently drop them? Let us now go to the summary. But before we learn the summary of this poem, before we analyze the poem stanza by stanza and talk about the figures of speech, let's first stop a moment and think, why should we read this poem? Why should we at all bother with this poem, and what are we going to take back home after reading the poem? So you see, animals, the title, they're mute and dumb creatures, but if you look carefully, you will see that they live life on much simpler terms than us humans. They have emotions and they feel, but their feelings and emotions are basic and plain. Yet, they can teach us something about love, loyalty, and compassion. It is only a short time in the grand scheme of the universe that we human beings have evolved from animals ourselves to occupy the alpha position in the world. Yet, it can be well argued that man-made social constructions have been developing with the passing time. They are developing and at the same time they are devolving. Perhaps it is time to connect ourselves with the simplistic animal world and relearn compassion and the philosophy of Hakuna Matata to make life worthy of living. At least that's what the poet thinks, and that's what we are going to take back from this poem. So let us learn the summary first. The poet believes he won't mind turning into an animal and live among them. The reason he provides is their calm and peaceful nature. He goes on to provide a contrast between the human and the animal world. The contrast is also between the artificial man-made social world and the natural world. He concludes that he is sick of the worries, artificialities, the double standards of the human world and longs for the simple life amidst nature as practiced in the animal world. He wonders whether he once was a part of that world and with evolution dropped those qualities negligently somewhere. Let us now talk about the tone and setting of this poem. The poem indicates the tiredness of the poet, living in the human world, watching their artificialities and double standards. He is exasperated of it all and, at the same time, sad, as he recognizes the tokens of himself that these animals bring to him. He feels a bit sad as he wonders whether this was the price that he had to pay for his evolution as a human being, that he dropped these simpler things in life somewhere on the way. The poem is set in the thought world of the poet. It presents before us his train of thoughts, though perhaps he is somewhere out in the open and close to nature. That is the reason he can recognize the contrast and feel sad about his present situation. Moreover, the fact that the animals bring him some tokens and show him their relations also suggests that he is somewhere from where he can see them. Let us now learn about the elements which are at play in this poem. First of all, we have the human world of artificial social constructs, and then the animal world of natural bliss. Let us now analyze the poem part by part. I think I could turn and live with animals. They are so placid and self-contained. I stand and look at them long and long. The one word that strikes the reader at the very onset is the use of turn. It indicates that the speaker is so exhausted with the human world that he even contemplates turning into an animal himself. The words placid and self-contained clearly indicates his longing. He wants peace that comes from self-satisfaction and self-contained nature, the end of all desire and the acceptance of life as it is. Such things are lost in the human world of possessions. We are always running after to hoard something or the other. Peace, satisfaction completely elude us. The poet looks at the animals wondrously as he observes their blissful lack of rush and competitiveness, which have become synonymous with human life today. Let us now take a look at the word notes. First of all, I could turn, a literal metamorphosis into an animal state, indicative of the blissful state in nature. Turn may also suggest treachery, a turning against his fellow human beings. He contemplates also turning into an animal and live among them, just to have a feel of the peace and independence from all materialistic needs. Placid, not easily excited or irritated, the poet envies the peaceful grazing of the animals with not a care in the world. Let us now talk about the figures of speech in this segment. I think I could turn and live with animals. They are so placid and self-contained. I stand and look at them long and long. Note the I sound. Repetition of same vowel sounds in close succession are called assonance. And I think I could turn and live with animals. The I and E sound is repeated in close succession in this line. Next we have consonants. Repetition of the same consonant sounds in close succession anywhere in the words. For example, I stand and look at them long and long. The L sound is repeated here. We have repetition of the same word for effect, especially to emphasize. For example, long and long. To emphasize the duration, the long duration that the poet is ready to stand and gaze at the animals. Anaphora is the repetition of same word or group of words in consecutive sentences. For example, I think I could turn and live with animals, they're so placid and self-contained. The I part is repeated again in the second line, I stand and look at them. Next, we have the second part to analyze. They do not sweat and whine about their condition. They do not lie awake in the dark and weep for their sins. They do not make me sick discussing their duty to God. Not one is dissatisfied, not one is demented with the mania of owning things. The poet further clarifies his position. He realizes that the desire of one from such an advanced species to revert back to the basic animal form may sound odd to many. Hence, he compares the animal world and the human world to support his desire. While the humans grudge about their duties and responsibilities, animals do what they need to do because it is their nature. In the natural world, everything happens just as it is supposed to happen, and everybody plays their part in it voluntarily. The poet is also tired of the double standard of human world. Humans repent to God for their sins they commit or discuss the duties they perform. They are hypocrites because even after apparently knowing that something is a sin, they commit it. And duties are meant to be performed, not flaunted. Moreover, the human race is sick with this rat race to hoard things. They don't understand that money is only external and whatever is really important to us are invisible to the eyes and cannot be hoarded. Never. All this make the poet sick and tired of the human life and he wishes to turn into an animal and go live among them. As animals are free of this manic tendency and hence can enjoy a blissful life free of all earthly desires. Let us now take a look at the word notes. Whine. Whine is to complain in an annoying crying voice. Make me sick is to irritate, tire someone out. Demented is a crazy mental illness, to behave in a strange manner for these reasons. Mania is a mental illness in which someone is obsessed about something that makes them extremely violent, anxious, or confused. Now let us take a look at the figures of speech. First of all, see the word or the phrase they do not. They do not is repeated in all the lines. I'm sure you already know this figure. Can you tell me what it is? Yes, it is anaphora, repetition of same word or phrases at the beginning of each line or clause. Now, let us take a look at the lines again. For example, not one is dissatisfied, not one is demented with the mania of owning things. Do you note the repetition of the D sound at the beginning of the words dissatisfied and demented? You know the figure, right? Yes, it is alliteration, repetition of the same consonant sounds at the beginning of words in close succession. Let's have another figure called consonants, repetition of the same consonant sounds anywhere within the words placed in close succession. For example, let us take a look at this line. They do not make me sick discussing their duty to God. Note the repetition of sir sound at the beginning of sick and in the middle of discussing. And do you note that We have another figure here, sweat and whine about their condition. Don't you see that the poet is comparing the sweating and whining of human beings with the animals? Do you know what figure it is? Yet, it is metaphor. One thing is compared to another in an implied manner, as sweat and wine refers to the human cries and complaints. Let us now move on to the next part of the analysis. Not one kneels to another, not to his kind that lived thousands of years ago. Not one is respectable or unhappy over the whole earth. So they show me their relations to me, and I accept them. You see, Whitman continues to list the differences. In fact, he moves from strength to strength. The picture of human evolution is bleak if his words are to be believed. Man has evolved, but at the cost of equality. Social discrimination, unnecessary deification are the bane of human society. Some of us gain immense respect among the rest for their experience or social bearings, whereas others are left to mope over their ill fate. Such differences aren't there in the animal world. There, everyone is equal and are treated each other without discrimination. So the animals show the narrator his relations. His acceptance of them is indicative of his inclination to go and live among them in close connection to nature. So basically, what he wants is to feel again connected, to go back to his roots in the heart of nature. Let us now take a look at the word notes. Not one kneels to another. The poet is referring to the social inequality which can be observed in the man-made society. Lived thousands of years ago. Here Whitman talks about the process of deification, of transforming a human being into God. Age, antiquity, and myth-making all are part of human invention and together contributes in extending the divine aura on someone, thus resulting in inequality. Respectable, here it means just acceptable or fair, nothing extraordinary. Unhappy, you see, unhappiness is caused due to desire and its unfulfillment. Let us now take a look at the figures of speech. Again, see the phrase not one repeated in each of these lines. I'm sure you're already having the figure at the tip of your tongue. What it is? Yes, it is anaphora, repetition of same word or group of words at the beginning of each sentence or clause. Next, we again have consonants. Where can you find it? So they show me their relations to me and I accept them. Note the repetition of the s sound in all the words in this line. Moreover, this entire poem, if you take a look at it, has no rhyme scheme. Remember this because we will come to this afterwards. Let us first talk about the next part of the analysis. They bring me tokens of myself. They evince them plainly in their possession. I wonder where they get those tokens. Did I pass that way huge times ago and negligently drop them? See, the comparison is now over, and the poet presents now his final argument in support of his desire to metamorphose and live among the animals. The poet recognizes the tokens that the animals bring to him as his own. This makes him wonder whether he himself dropped them negligently over time. The hint is clear. The evolution has brought many changes, but it is not without its shortcomings. Man has evolved, but in the process has lost connection with earth and nature. Whitman wishes to bring that harmony and unity back and to live in close proximity with nature. Let us now take a look at the word notes. Tokens of myself, reminders of what he once had been. They made the poet long for a life in close proximity with nature just as animals. Evince is to display clearly. Negligently is to be careless, marked by given to neglect. Let us now talk about the figures of speech. First of all, let's have metaphor, an implicit comparison between two objects. The inner human qualities are compared with tokens when the poet says, "They bring me tokens of myself, they evince them plainly in their possession." Then we have alliteration, repetition of the same consonant sounds at the beginning of words in close succession. For example, "I wonder where they get those tokens." The "were" sound is repeated in "wonder where." Rhetorical question is a self-evident question asked for prominence or to lay emphasis on a certain point without expecting any real answer. You see, the last sentence, "Did I pass that way huge times ago and negligently drop them?" The hint is clear. He did negligently drop them. But it is there only for a rhetorical purpose, to add emphasis or to provide prominence to his main argument. And remember, as I said, this whole poem has no particular rhyme scheme. You see, this poem is written in free verse. There is no apparent rhyme scheme, but the poet molds the lines in whatever way he wishes for a complete organic appearance that serves his purpose. Let us now have some ideas on the title. You see, Walt Whitman in his poem focuses on the animal world. He longs for the peace and simplicity that they demonstrate, living in close proximity with nature. With this, he contrasts the human created society with all its problems and the concept of God and religion. It is evident that he is tired of the artificiality and hypocrisy of the human society and longs to turn and live with the animals among whom he identifies his old qualities, or by extension, the qualities of humanity that human beings themselves have dropped off negligently in their march towards evolution. Since the poem takes animals to indicate the benefit of living close to earth and nature as the title, it is appropriate. Here we come to an end to our discussion today. Hope you have understood the poem. If you have any questions, do contact us through the comment section. Thank you till we meet again. Bye bye.